The sun was hot as we loaded our bags into the SUV, excited for our family trip. My husband of 37 years, Jack, was giving instructions like a drill sergeant. "Olivia, make sure the cooler has enough drinks and snacks for the drive, and don't forget the maps and directions," he ordered. I held back my response, trying not to remind him that I'd been planning this trip for months. As usual, he left all the details to me and just expected to enjoy the results. Then Jack's mother, Julie, stepped out of the house, already looking irritated. "Are we ready to go yet? You know I hate waiting," she complained. I forced a smile. "Almost. Larry and Cheryl should be here soon." Right then, my son and daughter-in-law arrived. Larry gave me a knowing look, clearly aware of the tension between his dad and me. We all climbed into the SUV, and I took my seat up front, ready for the long drive. As we hit the highway, I overheard Julie whispering to Jack from the back. "Once we're at the cabin, we'll have that talk with Olivia," she murmured. My heart sank. What were they planning? Jack replied quietly, "It's for the best, Mom. She'll never see it coming." I felt a knot in my stomach, realizing they were up to something on what was supposed to be a fun family trip. The drive was mostly silent, broken only by Julie's occasional rude remarks. By the time we arrived at the cabin, I was on edge. As we unloaded, Jack pulled me aside. "Olivia, we need to talk," he said. I braced myself, determined not to show how uneasy I felt. "About what?" I asked. He looked around, cautious. "Not here. Let's take a walk." We walked down a nearby trail as the sun started to set. Finally, Jack spoke. "Mom and I have been discussing her health. She needs more care than I can give her alone." I nodded, not sure where this was going. "We've decided it would be best if she moved in with us permanently, so you can take care of her," he said. I was shocked. "You want me to be her full-time caregiver without even asking me first?" Jack's face hardened. "It's the logical choice. You're retired, and I'm still working. Who else would do it?" I shook my head in disbelief. "And what about my needs, Jack? Don't they matter at all?" He just rolled his eyes. "Don't be so dramatic. This is what families do. We take care of each other." But his words felt empty. In that moment, I realized our marriage was just an act, held together by duty instead of love or respect. As we walked back to the cabin, Julie greeted us with a smug smile, clearly enjoying her win. That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed, I couldn't stop thinking. How had things gotten so out of hand? When did I stop being Jack's partner and become more like his servant? I thought about all the dreams I'd given up, traveling, hobbies, a peaceful retirement, all sacrificed to keep others happy. But as the first light of dawn came through the curtains, a new resolve grew in me. I wouldn't stand by passively anymore. It was time to stand up for myself. The cabin's cozy look did little to calm my nerves as we settled in for the night. Jack and Julie acted as if nothing was wrong, chatting cheerfully about the views and plans for hiking. Their calm only made me feel more uneasy. After dinner, I excused myself and went to the bedroom, closing the door behind me. I sat on the edge of the bed, my mind racing. What were they planning and why? Memories rushed back, the times I'd put my dreams on hold for Jack, and how Julie had always treated me like an outsider in her son's life. Had I been so caught up in duty that I missed the cracks in our marriage? Then, a muffled voice from the living room pulled me from my thoughts. I leaned close to the door, listening. Jack's quiet voice came through. "I can't go on like this, Mother. She's become a burden." My heart pounded as Julie replied, "I told you she was never right for you. We need to act before it's too late." A chill ran through me. Were they planning to get rid of me? I pressed my ear harder against the door, hearing Jack say, "We have to be careful. Larry can never know the truth." Hearing my son's name was like a shock. They were planning to lie to him, to turn him against me. Tears filled my eyes as I took in their betrayal. I realized just how deeply they'd betrayed me. I stood there, frozen with shock. When Jack finally came into the bedroom, he kept his face calm, avoiding my eyes. "You should get some rest," he said, not looking at me. "Big day tomorrow." Then he disappeared into the bathroom, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts. I couldn't confront him yet, not until I had a plan. As he drifted off to sleep, I lay awake, plotting my next move. I wasn't going to let them do this to me without a fight. If they were showing their true colors, it was time for me to show mine, too. At dawn, as light crept through the curtains, I felt a new determination. No more playing the dutiful wife. From now on, I'd take charge of my own life. Over breakfast, I watched Jack and Julie closely, looking for any signs of their intentions. They kept up their act, chatting about the day's plans as if nothing were wrong. "I thought we could go for a hike this morning," Jack suggested casually. I forced a smile, going along with it. "Sounds great." As we set off into the woods, I hung back, letting Jack and Julie lead, with Larry and Cheryl behind me, talking quietly. Julie's voice floated back, sharp and cutting. "Honestly, Jack, I don't know how you put up with her. She's dead weight, dragging you down." My fists clenched at her words, but I kept silent, waiting for the right time. Jack's reply was muffled, but I caught enough to understand. "Don't worry, Mother. Soon she'll be out of our lives for good." A surge of anger washed over me. After everything I'd sacrificed, this was how they treated me? In that moment, an idea formed in my mind, a plan for justice, a plan to stand up for myself. As we reached a scenic overlook, I hung back, letting the others enjoy the view. While their backs were turned, I quietly slipped away, retracing my steps back toward the cabin. It was time to take control of my life. When I reached the cabin, I glanced around, my heart pounding. Jack's leather briefcase was sitting on the coffee table. Without hesitation, I opened it and started going through its contents: financial statements, legal papers, and letters. My breath caught when I unfolded one particular letter. The handwriting was feminine and full of emotion. The words jumped out at me. "My dearest Jack, our stolen moments together are all that keep me going." It was clear there was more betrayal here than I'd realized. I stumbled back, the room spinning around me. An affair? After all these years of loyalty and sacrifice, he'd been unfaithful. Anger and sadness rose up as I kept reading, each word revealing more about his betrayal. And there were more letters, each one worse than the last. Tears blurred my vision as I flipped to the financial records, my hands shaking. Line after line showed hidden expenses and secret accounts, proof that Jack had been draining our savings right under my nose. Laughter drifted in from outside, and I froze, panicking. Larry and Cheryl must have returned from the hike. I had to act fast. Grabbing the evidence, I rushed to the bedroom and began packing my suitcase, my mind racing with a plan. I couldn't confront Jack and Julie here, not with Larry in the middle of it all. No, I needed to get away, to find my strength and decide what to do next. As I zipped up my suitcase, I heard Larry's voice calling from the living room. "Mom, are you in here?" My heart clenched at the worry in his tone. He deserved to know the truth, but not yet. "I'm just resting, honey," I called back, keeping my voice steady. "I'll be out in a bit." Silence followed, then the gentle murmur of Cheryl's voice as she led him away. Bless her for sensing something was off. With shaky hands, I quickly scribbled a note and tucked it into Jack's briefcase along with the evidence. Clutching my suitcase, I slipped out the back door to the rental car waiting outside. As I pulled out of the driveway, I caught a glimpse of Larry and Cheryl on the porch, looking confused. A pang of guilt hit me, but I pushed it down. They'd understand in time. Right now, I had a mission: to gather the strength and resources I'd need to hold Jack and his mother accountable. They thought they could toss me aside like nothing, but they had no idea what was coming. The miles stretched out before me, and with each one, I felt a weight lifting. No more being the dutiful wife, the obedient daughter-in-law. From this moment, I was in charge of my own life. And Jack and Julie? They would pay for every betrayal, every ounce of disrespect. As the sun set, a determined smile crossed my face. The game was on, and they didn't have a clue what was coming. I drove into the night, the miles blurring together, my mind set on the path ahead. I put distance between myself and that awful cabin, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Anger and adrenaline rushed through me.
How could he?
How could Jack betray me like this, after everything we'd been through? The details of those letters burned in my mind, like acid. And Julie, that cruel woman, had been in on it from the start, probably enjoying every bit of my humiliation. Well, they would regret ever crossing me. As the sun started to set, I pulled into a plain, quiet motel. My body buzzed with nervous energy. I needed to regroup and make a plan. The shabby room didn't do much to calm my nerves, but I took deep breaths, willing my racing heart to slow down. Sitting on the worn-out bed, I grabbed my phone with trembling fingers. Jack's number glared back at me, and a bitter laugh escaped my lips. How things had changed. No more playing the obedient wife, ready at his every call. This time, he'd be the one feeling the heat. The phone rang, over and over. Just as I was about to hang up, his gruff voice came through. "Olivia, where the hell are you? Your son is worried sick." His tone was the same mix of arrogance and control, but not anymore. "Save it, Jack," I snapped. "I know everything. The affairs. The money you've been taking. I have proof." Silence hung between us, heavy and tense. Then he laughed, a low sound that sent chills through me. "So what?" he sneered. "You really think anyone will believe the crazy rantings of a bitter old woman?" Rage flared up inside me, but I forced myself to stay calm. "I'm not the one who's out of touch, Jack. You and your mother have played me for fool long enough. Those days are over." Another pause, and when he spoke again, his voice was full of anger. "You ungrateful woman. After all I've done for you, for this family, you're going to regret this." I let out a harsh laugh. "No, Jack. You're the one who's going to regret it. Every lie, every betrayal, every bit of disrespect, you'll pay for it all. I promise you that." His response was a stream of cursing and insults, but I barely heard it. A steady determination had settled over me, strengthening my resolve. "Don't bother coming after me," I said before hanging up. I cut him off sharply, warning him, "If you know what's good for you, you'll stay away from our son. This is just the beginning, Jack. I'm done playing nice." With that, I ended the call, feeling a strange sense of calm. For the first time in years, I felt in control of my life. Grabbing a pen and paper, I started making a list: names, numbers, resources. I needed allies in this battle, people I could trust to stand by me. First on my list was Victoria, my oldest and closest friend. She'd been telling me to leave Jack for years, and I knew I could count on her. Next, I'd need a tough lawyer, someone who wouldn't back down and could help me deal with Jack's lies and hidden accounts. I had evidence of his betrayals, but I needed an expert to make sure it would hold up in court. As I kept adding to the list, I felt a new sense of purpose. I wasn't the weak, overlooked wife anymore. Jack and Julie had woken up a side of me they weren't ready for, and now they were going to face the consequences. A determined smile crept onto my face as I added the last name. Larry, my son, my rock. The one person in that twisted family who had always stood by me. It was time to bring him into this, to let him know that the games were over. Together, we'd stand up to the ones who'd tried to tear us down, and when all was said and done, Jack and Julie would regret ever crossing me. I pulled up to Larry and Cheryl's cozy bungalow, my heart racing. This was it, the moment of truth. Would my son understand why I had to do this? Or would he side with his father, blinded by years of lies? Taking a deep breath, I gathered my things and knocked on the door. The seconds felt like hours before Cheryl's smiling face appeared. "Olivia, we were so worried when you left like that. Come in, come in." Her smile faded as she noticed the suitcase in my hand and my tired expression. "Is everything okay?" she asked, concern in her eyes. I opened my mouth to answer, but the words got stuck. Larry's voice drifted in from the living room. "Mom? Is that you?" He came around the corner, and I saw the moment he realized something was very wrong. His eyes went from the suitcase to my red, puffy eyes, and his face shifted from confusion to worry. "What's going on? Where's Dad?" Cheryl placed a gentle hand on his arm, glancing between us. "Why don't we all sit down?" she suggested softly. We settled onto the couch, the silence heavy around us. Larry's eyes locked onto mine, searching for answers. I took a shaky breath, knowing I had to find the right words. I started talking, the words pouring out. Larry, your father, he's been unfaithful. For years, by the looks of it. And that's not all. He's been draining our finances, moving money into hidden accounts. Larry's face tightened with confusion. No, that can't be. Dad would never. His voice trailed off as I handed him the crumpled letters and bank statements showing the missing funds. He scanned the pages, and I watched as the truth hit him, making his shoulders slump. Oh, Mom, he whispered. I'm so sorry. Tears stung my eyes, but I held them back, straightening myself. That's not all. Your grandmother was in on it. They planned to push me out, to make me your father's full-time caregiver, while he did whatever he wanted. Cheryl gasped, and Larry's expression darkened with anger, his fists clenching. How could they do this to you? To our families? I placed my hand over his. It doesn't matter now. What's done is done. I've made my choice. I'm leaving your father. I can't keep living like this, being disrespected and used. I saw the struggle in Larry's eyes, his loyalty to his father clashing with his support for me. Finally, he looked at me, his gaze full of fierce determination. You're right, Mom. This has to end. Dad and Grandma, they've gone too far. I'm with you, 99%. Whatever you need, I'm here. A weight lifted from my shoulders. Cheryl nodded in agreement, squeezing Larry's hand. In that moment, I knew things would be okay. With my son and his wife by my side, I could face any storm Jack and Julie threw at me. I pulled Larry into a tight hug, blinking back grateful tears. Thank you, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. Thank you for standing by me. Holding my son close, I felt a new strength flow through me. The road ahead would be rough, but I wasn't alone. With Larry and Cheryl's support, I was ready for whatever came next. Jack and Julie had underestimated the bond between a mother and her child. Now they would face the consequences of their betrayal. The fight had begun, and I had no intention of losing with Larry and Cheryl's unwavering support by my side. I felt a new sense of strength and determination. It was time to take back my life, to break free from Jack and Julie's control once and for all. My first step was to find a place of my own, somewhere peaceful where I could start to heal and plan for the future. Larry insisted on helping me look, and within a week, we found the perfect little apartment in a quiet neighborhood. As I unpacked, filling the shelves and walls with things from my life, I felt a weight lift. This was my space, my escape from the toxic life I'd left behind. Of course, Jack didn't take my leaving calmly. He showed up at Larry's door, red-faced and shouting, demanding to know where I was. She's your mother, for God's sake, he yelled at Larry. You're supposed to be loyal to your family, not that ungrateful woman. But Larry held his ground, his jaw set in that familiar, stubborn way. Mom's the only family I need right now, he said firmly. You and Grandma have done enough damage. Jack's eyes narrowed as he tried to think of a way to get control back. Don't be so quick to judge, son. You haven't heard my side of things. Larry didn't budge. I've heard enough. Mom showed me the letters and the bank statements. I know what kind of man you are. For a moment, Jack looked thrown off, but then his face hardened as he jabbed a finger at Larry. Mark my words, you're going to regret this. When your mother's lies catch up with her, don't come running back to me. With that, he stormed off, leaving an uneasy silence behind. Larry's shoulders slumped, and I could see how hard this was on him. I crossed the room and hugged him tight. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you for standing by me. He hugged me back, his voice filled with emotion. Always, Mom. I'm with you. Over the next few weeks, I focused on settling into my new life. I unpacked, decorated, and explored my neighborhood. Each day, I felt a little more like myself, the weight of Jack and Julie's poison lifting slowly but surely. They didn't make it easy. Jack bombarded me with calls and texts, sometimes pleading for me to come back, other times hurling insults. Julie was just as bad, leaving nasty voicemails that made my blood boil. But I stayed strong, knowing Larry and Cheryl were there for me. I knew that if I gave in, even a little, Jack would try to pull me back in, and I wasn't about to let that happen. Not after everything. The final straw came a few months later when Larry called me in a panic. "Mom, you need to get over here. Dad's lost it." I rushed over to find Jack yelling on Larry's doorstep, his face twisted in anger. "You're making a huge mistake. Siding with that lying woman," he shouted as I approached. "She's turned you against your own family." Nearby, Julie wrung her hands and glared at me with pure hatred. For once, I didn't feel afraid, only a steady anger at how they kept trying to manipulate us. I stepped right in front of Jack, meeting his furious glare. "That's enough. You've had your chance to tell your side, and Larry sees through your lies. We're done, Jack." His face turned purple with rage, and for a moment, I thought he might lash out. But Larry stepped up beside me, standing tall. "You heard her, Dad. It's time for you to leave. If you can't respect our choices, you're not welcome here anymore." Suddenly, Jack's anger faded, his shoulders drooping as he shot me one last, bitter look. "Fine, have it your way. But don't come crying to me when this falls apart." He and Julie retreated, and as they left, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. That chapter of my life was finally closed, and their hold over me was gone for good. Turning to Larry, I hugged him tightly, holding back tears. "Thank you," I whispered. He hugged me back, his voice full of emotion. "You don't need to thank me, Mom. You're the strongest person I know." And in that moment, I knew it was true. Jack and Julie had done their best to tear me down, but I had come out stronger than ever. At long last, I was free. With Jack and Julie out of our lives, Larry, Cheryl, and I found some peace. But I knew it wouldn't last forever, not with how they had acted. Sooner or later, they'd try to regain control over the family. My chance for closure came a few months later, on Joyce's 89th birthday. Despite the tension, Julie still expected the entire family to show up and celebrate. I knew she'd unleash her anger if we didn't go. Part of me wanted to stay away, to just let it go. But another part of me, the part that had been mistreated and pushed around for years, wanted justice. This would be my chance to reveal the truth about Jack and Julie's actions in front of everyone. With Larry and Cheryl's support, I decided to go to the party. As we drove toward Julie's grand estate, I felt ready for whatever was to come. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy. Joyce greeted us at the door, her usual smirk in place. Well, if it isn't the prodigal daughter-in-law," she sneered. "You've got a lot of nerve showing up here after how you treated my sister." I was about to reply, but Larry stepped in first, his voice steady but firm. "That's enough, Aunt Joyce. We're here to celebrate your birthday, not listen to your insults." Her eyes widened at his tone, but she moved aside and let us pass. Inside, the party was in full swing, with guests chatting, sipping drinks, and mingling. Julie spotted us immediately, her face tightening with anger as she headed in our direction, clearly ready to unload on me. But Jack grabbed her arm and whispered something to her, stopping her mid-stride. For a second, I thought they'd cause a scene, but Julie pulled herself together, giving me a look of pure hatred before plastering on a fake smile. "Olivia, darling, how lovely of you to join us," she said, her voice dripping with forced sweetness. "And Larry, Cheryl, we're just thrilled to have you here." I refused to be intimidated. Lifting my chin, I met her gaze head-on. "Thank you for the invitation, Julie. It's been far too long since the whole family has come together." She narrowed her eyes at my emphasis on family, but stayed silent. Jack, however, couldn't resist a jab. "Yes, well, some of us have a rather twisted view of what family actually means, don't we?" His comment was aimed at me, but I didn't take the bait. Instead, I excused myself and made my way to the bar. If I was going to make my move tonight, I needed a drink first. As the evening wore on, I watched Jack and Julie as they moved around the room, mingling and acting like they owned the place. Joyce, too, sat on her throne, overseeing everything with her usual smug look. Finally, as the cake was being served, I saw my chance. Rising from my seat, I tapped my glass and called for everyone's attention. If I could have everyone's attention, please. The room grew silent. All eyes on me. Jack and Julie's faces looked tense, with a flicker of unease in their eyes. Taking a deep breath, I began, my voice clear and steady. I'd like to thank Joyce for inviting me to this lovely celebration. It's been far too long since we've all been together as a family. I let the word family hang in the air, making sure it sank in. Julie's eyes narrowed, but I kept going. I say family loosely because while we may be tied by blood and marriage, the sad truth is that this family has been falling apart for years. Shocked murmurs spread through the crowd, and I saw Jack tense, his face turning red with anger. But I couldn't stop now. The words just kept coming. For decades, I've endured the cruelty and manipulation from my husband and mother-in-law. The emotional abuse, the financial lies, the complete lack of respect. Gasps and whispers filled the room as I laid everything out. The affairs, the hidden bank accounts, their plans to trap me as Jack's caregiver. By the time I finished, Julie's face was pale, her usual calm cracking. Jack looked stunned, as if he couldn't believe I dared to reveal his secrets to everyone he knew. For a long, charged moment, the room was silent. Then, suddenly, outrage and judgment poured forth. How could you, Jack? Julie, we trusted you. Voices rose around us, filled with shock and disapproval. Julie shrank back, her eyes searching for someone, anyone, to stand with her. But no one did. Even Joyce turned her back, her lips pressed in a thin, disapproving line. As the noise raged on, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The weight of shame and secrecy was gone, replaced by a sense of freedom. I crossed the room to stand before Jack and Julie, looking them directly in the eye. "It's over," I said quietly but firmly. "Your lies, your manipulations, they're all exposed. You have no power over me or this family anymore." Julie opened her mouth, likely to throw out one last insult or threat, but the words died as she looked around, seeing only judgmental glares and hearing whispers of disgust. In that moment, the fight left her. She was a defeated queen, her reign finally over. With my head held high, I walked out of the room, Larry and Cheryl by my side. As we stepped into the cool evening air, I felt an immense weight lift from my shoulders. I was finally free from their toxic hold, their twisted games. The path ahead would be long, but I knew I'd face it with strength and pride, unbroken. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, and oh, how sweet felt. In the days after Joyce's disastrous party, a calm settled over me like I hadn't felt in years. I was finally free from the constant weight of Jack and Julie's control, their toxic influence gone from my life. Of course, they didn't leave quietly. Jack bombarded me with calls and emails, switching between begging for forgiveness and angrily accusing me of betrayal. Julie, too, tried to regain control, leaving nasty voicemails that I deleted without a second thought. But I was done with their drama and mind games. I had revealed the truth for everyone to see, and in doing so, I had taken back my self-respect. With Larry and Cheryl by my side, I focused on building a new life, one free from the chains of my past. I moved into a small, cozy apartment in a charming neighborhood, filling it with things that made me happy: fresh flowers, soft blankets, and framed photos of good times. As the weeks turned into months, I started to explore the world outside my old life. I joined a book club at the local library, losing myself in stories of other strong women who had overcome their own struggles. I also volunteered at a soup kitchen nearby, finding comfort in helping others. Slowly but surely, I started to heal and reclaim the parts of myself that had been hidden for too long. The anger and bitterness I once felt gave way to a sense of peace. Larry and Cheryl were always there, supporting me. We had regular family dinners, filling my little apartment with laughter and love. When Cheryl gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, I was there every step of the way, overjoyed to become a grandmother. Holding my granddaughter in my arms, looking into her innocent eyes, I made a silent promise. This child would never experience the pain and control I had faced. She would grow up surrounded by love and respect, her spirit cherished and protected. In those quiet moments, rocking my granddaughter to sleep, I found a peace and purpose I hadn't felt in years. This was what truly mattered, not the arguments or toxic power struggles, but the simple joys of family and unconditional love. And if Jack and Julie ever tried to come back into our lives and spoil this happiness, they would quickly learn that I was no longer the weak, defeated woman they once enjoyed tormenting. Not anymore. I was like a phoenix, rising from the ashes of my past, stronger and more determined than ever. I would protect this new life with everything I had, no matter what came. Over the years, Jack and Julie's attempts to reach out grew less and less. Whether they had finally accepted defeat or found someone else to torment, I didn't know and didn't care. They were shadows from my past, holding no power over me anymore. My focus stayed on the present, on cherishing each moment with my son, my daughter-in-law, and my beautiful granddaughter. We became a close family, not because of blood or duty, but because of the deep love and respect we shared. In the quiet moments, watching my family grow and thrive, I knew I had won the real victory. Not through anger or revenge, but by simply living my life on my own terms, unbroken and unafraid. Jack and Julie had tried to tear me down, to take away my dignity and self-worth, but in the end, it was their bitterness that withered and faded like a weed starved of light. As for me, I had risen, strong and full of life, like a flower in full bloom. That was the greatest triumph of all, a true testament to the strength of the human spirit.